Thank you. Good evening. Prior to commencing with the regular agenda, committee members, we have the exciting opportunity tonight to appoint a new secretary treasurer. And, Mr. Hardcastle, I'm going to pick on you. I'm wondering if you'd be prepared to move the following motion that pursuant to subsection 44(8) of the Planning Act, Jennifer Elcar be appointed Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Oakville until such time as a new Committee of Adjustment has been appointed by Town Council. Hardcastle? Yes. Thank you. It's moved by Mr. Hardcastle. All those in favor? Okay, that is unanimous. Jennifer, you drew the short straw. Welcome to the team.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Once again, good evening. Tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live streaming video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you're watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca, and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, 905-815-6095. Phone number is also posted on your screen below the live stream at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call. When you call in, staff will ask your name, item number you wish to address, and your telephone number. Further instructions will be provided for you to call back to join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, press *6 to unmute yourself. The applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application, answer any questions that may arise. Maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for a presentation. You'll need to state your full name and address for the record. Any submissions beyond 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record. Maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make your presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond 5 minutes will again be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to the comments made by any interested parties and address any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in the staff report, particularly with any proposed conditions, this is your opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision. This will mark the end of the discussion. Any person desiring a notice of decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary Treasurer. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed not later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consents to the applicant and or agent and any other person who filed a written request for such notice. The last day to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal will be noted on the decision. Only the applicant, specified persons, or public bodies may appeal the committee's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In November 2022, Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, amended the Planning Act to remove appeal rights for members of the public. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding. Secretary Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in the hearing are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and the other people participating in the electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. We have regrets tonight from Ms. McHale. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, do we have any requests for deferral or withdrawals tonight?
No, we do not.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. We have no consent applications tonight, so we'll move to the minor variance applications. And starting with CAVA 102-2024 at 270 Vilma Drive.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we do have a hand up. Curtis, okay. One sec.
See Mr. Van Koolen. Good evening.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, fellow committee members. My name is Curtis Van Koolen. I'd like to ask for a deferral. The file number is CAVA 105 for 1187 Pine Grove Road. We wish to work with planning to reduce the massing and go over the variance requested and do our best to better adhere to their guidelines. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of deferring the application? Okay, it's unanimous. Your application has been deferred. See the Secretary Treasurer when you're willing to come back for a new date.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just check one more time if there's any other people seeking the deferral before we move on.
No, Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone else.
Okay, thank you. CAV 102-2024 at 270 Vilma Drive. The applicant can raise their hand so the Secretary Treasurer. I see Mr. Metaljan now.
Yes, good evening, Chair and members. My name is Rick Metaljan. My company name is SMDA Design Limited. The address is 1492 Wallace Road, Unit 9, Oakville, Ontario.
Good evening.
Thank you. I represent the property owner on Vilma Drive. The background here is that we did a design for a new residence at this location. The residence at the time of the design required no variances. It was entirely compliant, including as regards GFA and garage area. As they were building it and as they were finishing off the build, the contractor and the owner decided that they would take part of the garage and they would take that over and create a mudroom. And they had no idea when they were doing this that there would be any zoning implications to this. But as they did that, they effectively took some of the garage area, which is not counted as GFA, and they then brought it into the finished part of the house. So it then was counted as GFA. As I say, they had no idea that there would be any implications to this. They made no effort to hide this or anything from the building inspector. The building inspector saw it and requested that they get a permit to allow it, and that is what brings us here tonight to ask that the addition of that mudroom on the main floor be allowed. The size of the mudroom is about 1.8 meters wide by about 4.8 meters long. As is noted in the staff report, it has no effect on the practicality of the garage. It still meets the requirement to be able to park 2 cars. It simply adds a little bit of finished space at the back of the garage, which they intend to use as a mudroom. There's no impact whatsoever to the exterior appearance of the house. Our client has spoken to his neighbors. They have no concerns with it. And in fact, they were actually frankly surprised that it would cause an issue. So with that having been said, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm hopeful that the committee will agree with the staff report that there's no impact here, and will grant us a variance so that we can legalize that mudroom.
Thank you, Mr. Intelligent. We can have, just wonder if we can get the drawings back on screen, and if Mr. Intelligent, you could show us the floor plan.
Certainly.
In case anyone's watching online that wants to fully understand the drawings.
Certainly. So if we go back to the main floor plan. That looks like the site plan. It's probably, let's keep on going through. Keep on going through, please. Can you advance to the next slide, please?
Looks like they're having technical difficulties. All right, I had the best of the questions. Yes?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, that's all we have. This is all of the drawings that were up on the website. We do not put up floor plans on the website.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, I can advise the committee that the space involved, as I indicated before, was about 4.8 meters wide by about 1.8 meter deep. So effectively, the back of the garage.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? See none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in wishing to speak to this application?
No, they have not, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I will then close the discussion, look to the committee for a motion. Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having undertaken my site visits, having reviewed the materials, including the written staff report, and having heard the presentation from the agent, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms with the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I would note that there's no material impact externally to the building or additional building mass, simply an administrative differential here. Accordingly, I'll put forward a motion of approval, subject to 2 conditions, those being that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated October 17th, 2022. Sorry, just confirming my date here. And the elevation drawings dated November 26, 2021, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Any discussion on that motion? I see none. All those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application has been approved.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
And you too. Good night.
CAVA 103 to 116 Chartwell Road. Mr. Giordano, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members.
We just get your name and address for the record,
Yep.
and then you can proceed.
Peter Giordano, David Small Designs, 1405 Cornwall Road. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, 1405 Cornwall Road in Oakville, and we're the designers and the authorized agent.
Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So we're here today requesting your consideration on one variance item. It's related to the site, not the house. The house had a permit issued in 2020, issued for the property. It's on the screen as approved on the left side of the screen. Working carefully with the landscape architect and creating a stunning front yard, our clients chose to narrow the long driveway, but felt strongly that it needed the capacity to maneuver a 3-point turn to enter and safely exit the property. A hammerhead was adopted as part of the driveway configuration. Zoning allowed for a 9-meter wide driveway maximum, but the driveway width measured at the hammerhead widened the driveway width 9.77 meters, and that exceeded the permitted width. We're here today requesting your consideration. We believe our application to be appropriate, represents good planning, and we hope that you agree.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak to this application? Again, the phone number is 905-815-6095. Any members, do you have any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in to speak to this application?
No, there are no one calling in.
Okay, thank you. We'll close discussion on this application and I'll look for a motion. Mr. Dickey, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on my review of the owner's application, the site plan, my site visit, together with the presentation by the owner's consultant and the planning staff's report, I'm satisfied that the variance is minor in nature and conforms to the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I put forth a motion that the application as applied for be approved. And seeing as how it has already happened, we don't have any conditions on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve with no conditions? That is unanimous. Your application has been approved.
That's terrific. Have a good night.
Thank you. Just in case anyone joined late, CAV 105 at 1187 Pine Grove Road, that has been deferred. It'll be held at a later date, and when that is set, there'll be new notice issued. Move on to CAV A107 2024 at 485 Patricia Drive. Evening, Mr. Castillo. Good evening. If we can get your name and address for the record, and you can start with your presentation. Can you hear us, Mr. Castillo? You're very faint.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, that's good now.
Excellent. Sorry about that. Yes, good afternoon, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman. My name is Gerardo Castillo from Keystone Home Designs. I am the designer and the agent for 485 Patricia Drive. We are applying for a minor variance for a GFA. What's allowed is 41%, and we're requesting 43.71, which is basically 19.15 square meters over. I did send a little presentation there. Again, the main reason why the client, which will be the homeowner for this house, is requesting the extra space on the GFA. This is a family of 4 people, plus a senior, 85-year senior, that will require an elevator and a lot of space to maneuver. So that's what added that extra space for the elevator and that extra bedroom. But other than that, we comply with everything else. The design that we did for the house to reduce the mass of the house is that basically the second floor is reduced on the front, is set back from the front, from the sides. If you could scroll probably to the second to last page, you'll see that some of the rooms, even on the ground floor, like you see here, we have a study on the right side that there's no, it has like about 14 feet high ceiling height. So there's not a room above. This is the same, if you go to the last screen, the same situation with the great room there on your right. We have about 16-foot ceiling, so there's no rooms on top. So that helps on, with the privacy with the neighbors, to reduce the scale of the building, and helps reduce the mass itself of the building. This street and the area, the adjacent area, is changing rapidly, with a lot of bungalows changing into homes like this. I did went and talk with almost or most of the people that were in the radius that will be receiving the letter. Pretty much most of the neighbors were okay with it and supported. The ones that were not at home, I just left them a letter with my information, and so far nobody has contacted me. So again, we do believe this is a very, very minor variance, and we're open to discussions.
Thank you. If anyone does wish to speak to this application, again, please call in at 905-815-6095. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anybody called in for this matter?
There have been no calls, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And we'll close discussion and I'll entertain a motion. Ms. Yu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Based on my review of the application materials, so together with the staff report, having heard the presentation completed by the agent, in my opinion, this proposal can be considered minor in nature and meets the full test under the Planning Act. As such, I'd like to move a motion forward to approve this minor variance subject to standard conditions. The dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan elevation drawings dated May 14, 2024, and the approval expires within 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yu. Any discussion on that motion to approve? I see none. I'll just add to that I think this is an excellent example on how to use the design of the house to mitigate any impact of that additional space. Any members, all those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application has been approved, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You have a good night.
You too.
Okay, Chairperson. Mr. Van Coolen again.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, fellow members. Again, my name is Curtis Van Coolen of Hughes Design Studio. We're representing file number A108 at 453 Scarsdale Crescent. We're before you for one minor variance, and this one is in relation to the RFA. We've gone through a number of practices within the design of this home in order to mitigate the massing. We've dropped and varied the roof shape quite a bit, introduced a lot of elements along the facades of each elevation. I don't know if staff could pull up the elevation. This is the roof plan on the screen right now. There we go. So again, a lot of variation within the front facade, different roof heights and massing introduced all around the structure. So we do feel that our submission is minor in nature and meets the 4 tests. As I mentioned, there's even on the back of the house, you can see there, thank you. A lot of introduction of mid roof shapes and breaking up the massing of the home quite a bit. The family again is looking to build in this transitioning neighborhood, and they are also looking to house some additional family members. So that is the reason for the overage in the floor space. But again, going back to the mitigation of the massing, that was our main intent. If the committee has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anybody called in?
There have been no calls, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Van Koolen, there was one letter of opposition sent in. I was wondering if you wanted to address any of the points made there?
Yeah, the most of the points really had to do with the grading in the area. We definitely think that, you know, through the town's grading concerns, we meet those within the town's grading policies. And yes, there are, you know, some increase in this one in terms of the floor area. The 4% rounded up number that they spoke to does sort of exaggerate the number a little bit, but we do feel that through the mixing of the home, we definitely did a really good job of trying to keep the home from the exterior from impacting the neighborhood for sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll just give committee one last chance if they wanted to ask any questions based on Mr. Van Koolen's response to the neighbor's letter. I don't see anyone, so I will close the discussion and look for a motion on this matter. Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on my review of the owner's application, site plan, the building, elevation, my site visit, together with the presentation by the owner's consultant and the planning staff's report, also acknowledging a letter of opposition from one of the neighbors. However, I am satisfied that the variances are minor in nature and conform to the 4 tests under the Planning Act. I put forth a motion that the application as applied for be approved, subject to the standard conditions that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated May 29, 2024, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision. The building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey. Any discussion on that motion to approve? I see none. All those in favor?
Hello, am I the only person who cannot hear him?
Yeah, it looks like he's frozen.
Favor of the motion.
Mr. Chairman, you cut out for a moment. Would you
Yeah.
be kind enough to repeat?
Absolutely. All of a sudden, you all got very still. Basically, all those in favor of Mr. Dickey's motion to approve. That is unanimous. Your application has been approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow committee.
Have a good night.
You as well.
CAVA 109, 2024, 235 Willow Ridge Court.
Good evening, committee members. My name is Pamela Poses. I'm with Lumon Inc., Unit 5, 600 Zenway Boulevard in Vaughan, L4H3M9.
Thank you. You can continue.
Many thanks to staff for their ongoing assistance with their thorough report, including their positive recommendation in front of the committee this evening. The application proposes the construction of a new three-season sunroom over the existing rear covered porch and recognizes a new roof over an existing basement access stair to the southern side of the dwelling. Both the basement access stair roof and the sunroom are deficient in rear yard setback, 1.04 meters and 3.09 meters respectively, where 3.5 meters is required, contributing to the proposed increase in lot coverage to 25.87, where 25% is required. As indicated in Mrs. Heather report, both the Planning Service and Halton Region staff consider the presented deficiencies to be a minor deviation from the zoning bylaw regulation. It's important to notice that both structures are above existing covered or hardscaped areas and do not present any significant drainage concerns. Additionally, the proposed roof and sunroom does not present any negative impacts to the streetscape or surrounding properties. Would like to reinforce that the family had accidents in the mentioned basement stairs in the past, and that's what motivated them to install the subject cover, avoiding the stairs to become slippery during winter and rainy days. The neighbor from 229 Willow Ridge Court, who is adjacent to the proposed cover, supports the application. As we can see in the letter on the page 2 of this presentation, they recognize its importance in preventing accidents, understand that the area will be used only as a passage to the basement, and that the existing wood fence and trees in their side of in their property already grant privacy and can see on page 3 of the presentation. Yeah. With that, Mr. Chair, in full support of the staff's recommendation and would respectfully request the committee to support this direction. I'm available for any questions you may have about this file.
Okay, thank you. If anyone wishes to speak to this application, hasn't called in, please do so at 905-815-6095. Any members, do you have any questions for the applicant? I see none. Okay, Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in to speak to this matter?
There have been no calls, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I will close discussion and look for a motion. Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having undertaken my site visit and having reviewed the materials, including the written staff report, and heard the presentation from the agent for the owner, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the 4 tests of the Act. Accordingly, I'll put forward a motion of approval. That would be subject to 2 conditions, those being that the access stair, roof, and sunroom be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated January 9, 2024, and the elevations dated January 9th, 2024 as well. And that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision. Actually, Mr. Chairman, can I back this up for a quick second? I have a quick question. My apologies for my moment of inattention. If I could break from protocol here, ask a quick question of staff.
You know, I almost asked you if you had a question on the conditions. I guess I should have. Yeah, I think we can allow that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could ask staff, I note in the that the Conservation Authority has suggested an additional condition, and I was looking for staff insight as to the appropriateness of that additional condition.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member, as you are aware, the Conservation Authority has a special place in our approval process as being a matter of applicable law, which means that through the building permit process, they would be subject to securing that necessary clearance of a permit. In that instance, planning staff find it a bit redundant to include that specific condition, knowing that it would be captured as part of the natural building permit process for them to secure the permits with respect to the sunroom, which is primarily the concern of the Conservation Authority, given its proximity to the stable top of bank that affects the property. So I'm in your hands with the committee. If you wish to include a condition that would require the applicant to secure the permit, you can do that, but know and feel comforted in knowing that it is going to be required regardless, given that they'll be subject to applicable law review under the building permit process.
And thank you for that response. I think my question and why I raised it here was the commentary about an agreement with respect to some of the removals. I was not able to obtain full view of the rear yard and understand the full status of the agreements that are in place. And I was wondering about the value of adding that additional condition in to ensure that any agreements that are in place can get addressed and be linked herein.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee. So with respect to any additional structures that are currently there, the request for lot coverage does not anticipate those structures remaining. So again, further to the appropriate zoning review at the time of building permit, the property owner will have to demonstrate that they comply with the variance they're requesting today, should it be approved, in which case those additional structures that may or may not exist, depending on their status of removal, would have to be addressed at that time. Additionally, the request for the removal in terms of the existing agreement with the Conservation Authority would be captured through their permit as part of their own conditions in issuing such a permit. Perhaps additional clarity could be provided by the applicant's agent in terms of that status, but I will leave it to the committee should they choose to impose any such conditions. I don't object to them being required.
Yeah, so I spoke with our client today about the 2 sheds she had in the backyard, and she told me they were removed already.
They are removed.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Mr. Hardcastle, your motion on the floor at the moment includes the 2 conditions. Did you wish to include the conservation halting condition as well, or just stay with what you've got?
In light of the commentary that's been provided, and recognizing the powers of applicable law, and that the second condition speaks to the need for the permit issuance, I'm satisfied. I'm gonna go forward with staff advice, and have the motion subject to the 2 conditions, those being with respect to the plans and the 2 years expiry if a building permit's not been issued.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Any discussion on that motion? I see none. All those in favor of the motion to approve with the 2 conditions? That is unanimous. Your application has been approved.
Thank you so much.
You have a good evening.
You too.
Just remind anyone in the audience again, if you're wishing to speak to an application, if you can call in at 905-815-6095. We'll proceed with CAVA 110-2024 at 70 Brookfield Road.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Raymond Jemba. I'm from SGL Planning, located at 1547 Bloor Street. I am the agent for this file.
Good evening.
So it looks like we're jumping right into it. So first, I'd like to apologize. We prepared a planning opinion report that we submitted, but it's my first time at the town of Oakville's Committee of Adjustment and we misinterpreted the circulation deadline. Anyways, I will do my best to explain the application without it. If we could please actually bring up the circulation comments and turn to the second page, specifically figure 1. The subject site is located on the west side of Brookfield Road, just south of Lakeshore Road. The subject site contains a single detached dwelling that will be demolished for a new single detached dwelling with the building permit already issued. No changes to the approved single detached dwelling or building permit are being proposed. Sorry, it's actually, I'm going to jump over now. If we could actually bring up the architectural drawings and refer to this site plan, which is PDF page 4. The proposal today is to extend the length of an existing garage by 0.91 meters. This just results in about an additional 5.66 square meters in area, and this is required to fit 2 full cars spaces, specifically the owner's truck. This is shown by the gray area in front of the existing garage on the site plan drawing. If we also flip to the cross section on PDF page 7, this also shows the height of the extension. This is the blacked out area, and this is not going to be the same height as the peaked roof. So the extension's height is lower. The variances today, so the first variance is related to the maximum coverage. The bylaw specifically permits a maximum coverage of up to 35%, including the garage, whereas the proposal will increase the lot coverage to 35.6. The intent of the maximum coverage is really to protect both landscaping and soft landscaping requirements, which the application meets. Further, rear yard detached garages are just a more common characteristic of this area and usually result in a slightly increase in coverage. For the next 2 variances, if you can look to the survey, which is on PDF page 2 of the drawing set, this shows the adjacent neighbors' garages to the west and the south. You can see it right there. So the second variance is related to increasing the maximum lot coverage of the garage from 42 square meters to 43.97 square meters. The proposed garage extension will not impact the neighbor to the west as the garage width is not changing, and there's no anticipated impacts to the neighbor to the south as their existing garage's length is longer than the proposed garage on the subject site. Now, the third variance relates to recognizing an existing side yard setback condition of 0.37 meters to the south for the garage, where the bylaw requires 0.6. The intent of this provision is really to provide for adequate separation and minimize privacy concerns by reducing having a blank wall or a window wall adjacent to the neighbor's rear yard amenity space. As noted and shown on the survey, we're maintaining the existing setback to the south, and this is not intended to have any adverse impacts to the neighboring property, as again, the existing garage to the south is a longer length than the proposed garage. With respect to the 4 test, the proposal meets the general intent of the OP by proposing a permitted built form. It maintains the intent of the zoning bylaw by ensuring the proposal is compatible, is desirable as the proposed extension can be appropriately accommodated in a way that reinforces the existing character, and the application is considered minor, in my opinion, as there's no adverse impacts. This is also reflected in a positive staff report. Thank you for your time, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in to speak to this application?
We have no calls, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Then I'll close the session and look for a motion on application, which is to add a small addition to an existing garage adjacent to 2 large. I think I froze again. Okay, hopefully we're back, and I'll look for a motion on this application. Ms. Yu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have reviewed the application materials together with the staff report, having heard the presentation by the agent. Sorry? Anyone talking? Oh, okay.
What?
That's weird. So do you want me to start from the beginning or I can continue?
Sure, continue.
Okay. So in my opinion, this the variances proposed by the agent can be considered minor in nature and conform the full text under Planning Act. As such, I'd like to move motion forward to approve the minor variances subject to standard conditions. Sorry, not standard conditions. One, the garage addition be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and the elevations dated May 15, 2024, and the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you. Committee members, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve? Okay, that is unanimous. Congratulations, your first appearance was successful.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. We'll now hear CAV 8034 2023 223 Tweedsdale Crescent. This item was deferred from May. Mr. El-Rai, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, committee. This is Rahad Rawi from Professional Floor Plans, 4183 Loyalist Drive, Mississauga, Ontario, L5LW3. We are the designers and agent on behalf of the owner to apply for minor variance for this project. I will make my presentation in 3 parts. The part 1, I will explain the variance itself because it seems it's not very clear. And then the next thing is I will discuss a little bit about the zoning, technical zoning issue for this variance. And the third one to discuss the staff report regarding their comments. So I will start with the variance. I made a very fast presentation. Looking at the variances, you can see the site plan is exactly the same. No change in based on what we are asking for. If we go to the next page, please. That between axis A and B in the rear and axis 7 and 9, this rear part addition, which is part of the basement floor only, when we submitted for a building permit, we got this zoning deficiency comment stating that although the zoning bylaw states that anything below the grade is not considered within a gross floor area, the interpretation of the zoning reviewer is that we have to take it down at least 14 to 18 inches below grade and abandon any openings. So you can see these 2 cloud areas where these 2 windows below grade were proposed, one to the exterior and one to towards the below grade patio. And the second thing on axis 7, he said that you have to separate these walls that make this basement space completely separate from the wall that is related to the underground patio, which I mean, this is interpretation. In this case, this would be not added to the GFA. Otherwise, it will add the 3-point-something% to the GFA. So if we can go to the next slide, please. This one, first floor, exactly the same, no change, nothing above grade. Second, next, please. Nothing changed here as well. It's all remaining the same. Next, please. The roof plan is exactly the same. Next, please. Exactly the same. Next, please. So the rear elevation will be the same. Nobody is looking at anything. The only thing that instead of building this below grade addition to the grade level, which is like almost 700 millimeter below the front entrance. So it's even lower than the house itself. Other than that, we have to go down an extra 18 inches to satisfy the zoning. Next, please. And this is also the same side. See side elevation, we can see the windows being eliminated and the top level of this room is being altered based on that. And this is on the top, the lot coverage as appears in the zoning bylaw means the percentage of the lot area covered by all roofed structures and buildings above grade, excluding even projections to a maximum of 0.6 meter and balconies. Zoning bylaw 2014. While the zoning reviewer, he said, in order for any floor area not to be included within the lot coverage calculation, it will be required to completely submerge underground by a minimum of 0.3 to 0.46 meter, 12 to 18 inches of undisturbed earth with no windows or doors to the outside. A cross-section will be required to be submitted to verify the construction and the extent of undisturbed earth above the prior to the being exempt from the lot coverage calculation. So it's clearly a technical zoning issue rather than anything else. We are not asking for anything above grade. We are not asking to encroach anything. We are not affecting any of the neighbors. There is no visual destruction. There is no change of mass. The only two things that would happen that we have two windows, and even the staff didn't comment on that. The other thing is that we are trying to build something reasonable instead of building a dark space without windows and to add 3 steel beams and a bunch of earth on top of this slab that might require maintenance after 30, 40 years, and you have to demolish everything and do work. I think it's more convenient to build it per the grade. We are not getting anything above grade. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is also the other elevation is not completely not being affected by any means. Next, please. Yeah, this is the cross section, which describes what is the difference. Instead of building a reasonable concrete slab with 1 steel beam supporting it, we have now to add 3 steel beams, build a concrete slab, then fill with soil, and then put paving tiles, which is, I mean, it increases the carbon footprint for nothing, and it's not adding any value to the addition. And instead, we are getting a lower headroom and more cost of construction. Next, please. Yeah, I don't think this. There are lots of projects nearby that got variances, but I mean, in our case, it's even more clear that we are not asking for anything above grade. So if I go to the next phase of my discussion, is that, you know, the zoning bylaw, if it has things like that, because previously we got approved for similar cases, like 3 to 4 years ago, we did more than 100 houses in Oakville, and we got approved. We try usually to avoid minor variance as much as we can. So now it's different. So I would say, I mean, it would be advisable that, you know, when there is an amendment to the zoning bylaw or the description, maybe some illustrations, things like that, be published from time to time to help us to understand and implement. The third part is the staff report. Previously, we applied for minor variance like 1.5 years for this house when the client wanted to add a rear porch and added some floor area ratio. And once we submitted, we got the negative comments from the staff. So we deferred the application and start discussion with the staff. We had 3 rounds of discussion. We found that the staff would not support until like 0.5% additional floor area ratio or very little addition of this coverage. So we decided just to stop and not to go with any variance. So our design is completely in compliance. Staff report, the current staff report is evaluating this technical underground part and compare it to the massing and other requirements for the house itself, and always relate to the previous variance. So I wanted just to explain, we never went in Oakville previously against the staff recommendation. This is the first time, but because we believe it's been overlooked and the situation here is not a massing or not an addition, and the below grade basement addition would not affect anything. It needs 4 tests by all means without having any negative impact on the neighbors, on the mass, or would not increase anything. Thank you, and I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Albright, just so I can try to summarize your presentation. So from what I heard is that the house itself is fully complying, and the only reason you're still seeking a variance is because of the interpretation on And your concern with the staff report is that you don't think it's addressing the variance, you think it's addressing the design of the house.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, as well, we got the site plan approval and the demolition permit is ready, and we are just in the final stage of, we cleared all HVAC and architectural comments, and we are just waiting for the zoning approval.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I admit I'm a little confused here. Maybe you can help me, the consultant. So you received approval of a variance in March of 2023?
No. I'm saying we applied for a minor variance to get extra area, but we didn't get staff support, so we deferred and we abandoned the application and we continued the design without variances.
Okay.
But we had previously got approved for underground, like front cold room in below the front patio or in the rear, where it's below grade. It didn't have this condition that we have to go with 14 to 18 inches below grade.
Okay, just a minute. So you submitted an application to the Committee of Adjustment, then let's say you abandoned it, you came back and submitted a building permit that complied to the zoning bylaw and got that permit approved or along the way. And now you want to do something in the back where this basement is, you're building a stairwell down to the basement, and that's the problem is?
No, sorry. I mean, we applied for the building permit after we abandoned the zoning, the minor variance, and we are in the process of getting the building permit. We didn't get the building permit and we add to it. It's still ongoing. We got the forestry site plan agreement because there are trees in the property, and we got the site plan approved. We got the services permit, and now we got the demolition permit waiting for the building permit to be issued. And this happened in the last phase of the building permit that we got this zoning deficiency because of the rear part is at the grade level rather than going down 14 inches below grade.
Mr. Dickey, maybe I can help out here. So
thank you.
The applicant applied for a variance a year ago. Staff didn't support it. So they asked for a deferral. Then instead of proceeding with the variance, they submitted a new building permit application without the GFA variance and what they thought at the time was a fully complying plan. But through the building permit review with this current plan, building department came back and determined that they would have to include this walkout area under coverage, and that caused the variance that's in front of us tonight. And I'm going to ask Ms. Coburn to weigh in on this as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, the timeline is correct that the applicant had originally come in with an application in March of last year, had conversations with staff, did make some modifications, but I just want to be clear, the original application was for lot coverage and residential floor area. There was always a lot coverage variance. Modifications that they chose to make were to remove the floor area variance request and reduce the lot coverage as a result. However, when this came back, there was a notice deficiency, and so it was deferred a second time as part of there's a table in the staff comments that kind of delineate this a bit more clearly. But at that time, staff's comments were still negative. We were not supportive. We did not believe that sufficient effort had been made to address the impacts being caused by the increase in lot coverage as a result of the overall size and mass and scale of the building. I will add that I don't believe that staff are unaware or misinformed about the nature of the variance. There is over 300 square feet of coverage that is being requested here tonight. And I would further point out for the committee's benefit in looking at the staff comments that a modification modification to a rear access has never constituted coverage no different than in that you have a below grade stair, however big it is. We regulate for the projection of said stairway. Often we'll see those variances in the side yard component. But I've never heard of this issue where if it's so many inches above grade, then it's going to count as lot coverage that was not provided to us by the zoning staff. So from staff's approach and opinion of the application, the overall building, inclusive of all of its pieces, constitutes the overall development. I would highlight that at one point, the property or the dwelling had a rear covered porch, and they've removed that covering to reduce the lot coverage. Again, just taking off the covered porch doesn't negate the other concerns staff often have when it comes to the overall built form and massing as it's displayed on the street edge. So the staff comments, I believe, are quite clear, and they're well informed in terms of the nature of the variance, and the application before you is for an increase in lot coverage beyond what is permitted by the bylaw.
Thank you. Can I get a clarification from you? As I understood the applicant to say the coverage variance only related to the walkout area. Does staff agree with that, or is staff saying that the house itself, before you deal with this walkout area, is still in excess of the permitted coverage?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is the first time I have heard of a below grade access stair being the culprit, if you will, of a deficiency on the bylaw. So I would suggest to you and the committee that the proposal should be looked at as a whole. I cannot verify that it's specific to that area, and staff have evaluated this application looking at the development as a whole. Reflecting on the overall proposal, the rear stair is a mere component of the overall proposal, and in staff's opinion, the proposal does not conform to or comply with the 4 tests and does not represent a maintenance and protection of neighborhood character in this instance.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Dickey.
I just want to make a comment to the consultants. This is a pretty complex situation. It would have been appreciated if when you submitted your application 2 weeks ago that you sort of gave us a better understanding of what you were after. You are now at the 11th hour trying to make up a decision on something that's complicated. And I'm having trouble understanding it, obviously. So that's to your disadvantage. If you had explained 2 weeks ago and gave us some time to think about this, or more time to think about it and understand it, I think you might have been in a better position. So I'm not quite sure where I'm going. I only have a few minutes to make a decision, but I would have appreciated having made that decision a few days ago. So I just want to comment for you in the future, be careful when you're dealing with complex property that you don't give us enough heads up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I mean, I just want to explain a little bit, Ms. Cockburn, we work together a long time and we understand each other and we appreciate her help all the time. I would like to say, I mean, we had a rear covered porch and an addition to the house, which we abandoned completely. The stair, the below grade stair, is not part of the zoning variance. The house itself, with everything, is in compliance with the floor area ratio and with the coverage. The only technical matter we faced is that the rear room in the basement, which is below grade, the zoning staff are saying that this has to be added to the coverage if it's not less than 14 inches below the surrounding grade, which was a surprise to us as well. We applied for variance. Last month, we got deferred because the sign was not there. After investigating, we found somebody cut the grass and put it in a wrong way, and we had to come again. I submitted the presentation to the committee early, like when we resubmitted this, and I understand it might be a little bit surprising, but I think it's clear that everything is below grade and it's more technical rather than something related to the overall massing of the house or anything like that. Thank you.
Thank you. One last time, committee members, any more questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in to speak to this application?
There have been no calls, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Nathan, I'm gonna close. Oh, before I do that, Mr. Hardcastle, you were thinking?
I am thinking about the next step on this, Mr. Chairman.
So yeah, maybe you had a question there. Okay, then I'm going to close discussion and I'm going to characterize this as a difference of opinion between the applicant and staff. The applicant suggesting that the house itself complies and it's only a technical variance for the walkout area that brings him here. Staff are suggesting that regardless of that, they look at the application as a whole and their judgment with this application as a whole is that it doesn't comply with the character of the neighborhood, which I guess would mean that in their opinion it doesn't comply with the intent of the official plan. With that, I'm going to look to the committee for a motion on this matter. Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was something that was said by staff that resonated with me with respect to this, and has been a longstanding position of mine when we are dealing with minor variances for coverage and even for RFA massing. When applicants get into the conversation about if I were to part off a component of the building, the totality of the variance and the impact on the community is what we're here to evaluate, and so we must look at the totality of the building. Speaking of a singular component in the absence of considering the broader implications of the building design, is what staff is trying to bring into the evaluation in the staff report. Speaking not just to the below grade component, but also to the open to below components and and how they contribute to the massing, as well as the design and any other measures that can be used to mitigate massing. So I very much like to hear what staff said. I think it was very significant to me in understanding this this variance and in coming to a position that I do align in with staff on this. I do believe that the building is has a massing that is not consistent with the neighborhood. And that this is not just about that below grade component to the rear. So I will put forward a motion to refuse the application.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there any discussion on that motion to deny the application? I see none. All those in favor of the motion to deny the application? Okay, I'm sorry, sir, that your application has been denied.
Yeah, thank you. This is my first time in all my life, so I will see what I can do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Two applications left. If anyone wishes to speak to them, you can call 905-815-6095. Proceed with CAV 8073 2024 at 442 Sandmere Place, and it looks like the Mr. Van Coolen show continues.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, again, fellow committee members. My name is Curtis Van Coolen, Hughes Design Studio. Here in front of you for CAV 073. This was deferred from May 1st, 442 Sandmere Place. If staff could go to the front elevation, might be one page. There we go. In the planning staff's report, they summarize the amendments that we made to our application, not only in reducing the floor space quite a bit, we also reduced the front entrance height in order to minimize, obviously, the massing on the neighborhood. This front porch does encroach into the front yard setback. The main portion of the home itself complies with the front yard setback. This is sort of a shorter lot in the neighborhood. So the main portion of the house is positioned well on the property, I find, but the angled position of the house itself kind of forces the front entrance just over that front yard setback line. It's about 3/4 of a meter, so it's not anything unheard of in our opinion. And again, going back to the RFA variance, we did bring that down quite a bit in really pulling in the second floor massing of the home. If staff could go to the side elevations, so one more page, there we go. We've also done a really conscious job of trying to cover a lot of the second floor massing of the home by introducing these sloping roof that really do cover up a lot of the second floor space and really sort of hide it from the neighborhood's view, and introduce a lot more of the roof sloping away from the property lines of the neighboring structures. So if staff wants to go, excuse me, to the rear elevation, one more page, you can see on the right hand and the left hand side, you can see those sloping roofs that I was talking about, just again hiding the massing of the second floor. And really here you can see the rear of the home has the small portion on the right hand side there, which is the primary bedroom, just kind of peeking out of that mass. The 2-story family room is really brought down, and the roof separated from the main portion of the house. The ceiling is a bit lower than the main portion of the house. And then one little dormer on the left-hand side poking out of the roof shape, just to kind of give some room, give some light into the room in there. So again, if staff go one more page, there we go. On this side, there's a room above the garage. Again, we're shielding that room over the garage with a sloping roof shape and sort of buffering that mass to the neighborhood. So a lot of these things that we've really sort of brought into play here, we're done with intent and working with town staff to really bring this house into sort of conformance with their guidelines. We feel the variances are minor in nature and meet the 4 tests. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. We're always happy to see you turn a negative staff report into support. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in to speak to this matter?
There have been no calls, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, and I will close discussion and look for a motion on this application. Ms. Yu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After reviewing the planning application materials, and especially after hearing the presentation by the agent, I recognize and appreciate the efforts the agent has done to reduce the massive scale to accommodate the comments from the staff and address the concerns of the committee members. And in my opinion, the variances requested in this proposal can be considered minor in nature and complying to the 4 tests under the Planning Act. Accordingly, I'd like to move a motion forward to approve this application, subject to standard conditions. The dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and the elevation drawings dated May 15, 2024, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction. Thank you.
technical difficulties. All those in favor of the motion to approve? And it's unanimous. Your application is approved.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. We'll move to our final application of the night, CAV A075-2024 269 Chartwell Road. See Mr. Demchuk. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, members of the committee.
Mr. Demchuk, his memory serves, this application, when it was before us, had a positive staff report, and your client voluntarily asked for deferral to speak further with their neighbors?
That is correct. So originally we heard some concerns from specifically our neighbor to the south. Just in advance and for the benefit of the committee, we have had some significant discussions with the neighbor. Leading up to today, there were some minor modifications specifically made to the south side yard setback, which I'm happy to get into. But we obviously, leading up to today, we did receive a letter of support from that neighbor, and that was submitted to the committee.
Okay, go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. So again, my name is Paul Demchuk with Victoria Planning and Management. I'm the planning consultant on behalf of the applicant for 269 Chartwell Road. I'll try to be relatively brief as I know I'm the final item on the agenda tonight. Next slide, please. So the subject site is a vacant lot with 30.37 meters of frontage on Chartwell Road. Brief history of the site is that it was severed from the adjacent property in 2008. And in September of 2022, a minor variance application was approved at that time for a dwelling on the property, which included variances to both the dwelling depth from 20 to 23.38 meters, as well as increase in floor area ratio from 29 to 29.74%. However, those variances, while approved by the committee, the property was subsequently sold to my client, and they are obviously seeking an alternative design from what was originally approved. So the subject property being located on Chartwell Road is among many I would characterize as estate style homes, which are not necessarily unique to this immediate neighborhood. And in many instances, they have received variances over and above what the bylaw stipulates for in instances of increases in height, dwelling depth, floor area, among other technical matters, obviously depending on the context of the site. And some of those properties are obviously shown in this image as well. Next slide, please. So the proposed development is a two-story single detached dwelling. The coverage of the dwelling is 24.8%, which is under the required lot coverage, and the proposed height of the dwelling is 9.36 meters. A new access is proposed from Chartwell Road and is designed to mitigate to the best extent possible the existing mature tree canopy. And the proposed building has been located to fit appropriately on the site, again, falling within the required coverage and the majority of setback requirements, with the exception of obviously the southern side yard setback. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief image from the staff report. It's noted in the comments that, again, from May 15th, 2024, that staff did not object to the variances at that time. However, we have met with the neighbor and we have revised the building to be again sited from 2.4 meters on the southern side yard setback to 3.1 meters to address those concerns from the neighbor. Further, there was a slight modification to the northern, which is the northern side elevation access stairs, which are located below grade. And this specific variance is obviously included to address that, whereby there was just some design concerns related to just access and maneuverability for that access stair. And that's one minor modification that was made to the design. Next slide, please. So this is just a list of all the variances. You can see the majority of the variances are almost identical to what was obviously previously proposed. with the exception of a slight decrease in floor area ratio, an increase in the side yard setback, and a really minor decrease in the overall building height. Next slide, please. These are just some elevations of the dwelling for both the front and rear yard. Next slide, please. These are the side elevations on the north and south side. Next slide, please. And these are renderings of the proposed dwelling and how it's intended to be designed from a front and rear yard perspective. Just very briefly, obviously the intent of the dwelling depth, floor area, and dwelling height variances and those provisions in the bylaw are intended to mitigate massing and scale within a given neighborhood. In this instance, obviously, and staff obviously agree in their report, but the overall mass and scale of the dwelling is appropriately mitigated in this instance, and obviously meets the intent of the zoning bylaw and official plan and meets the 4 tests. And then secondly, just as it relates to the side yard setback, the driveway width, and the access stair, I note for the side yard setback, obviously, it's intended to ensure that there's enough spatial separation distance between dwellings and no negative impacts on drainage. Those have been obviously accommodated in the design. And further, just for the driveway width, actually, if I could take the staff just to, I think it's slide 3 or 4, it's my site plan. My apologies for, yes, that one. The driveway width variance, obviously from a zoning perspective, is measured from the widest part of the driveway to the entrance to the garage. And in this instance, it's obviously increased. It's greater than the requirements in the bylaw, but obviously from a streetscape perspective, this increase, it's located at the side of the dwelling, and there's no impacts from a streetscape perspective from this slight increase. Just in summary, again, I will note that the neighbor to the south, which originally had concerns with the development, has now provided a letter of support. That concludes my presentation, and before the committee, would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in to speak to this matter?
There have been no calls, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I will close the discussion and look for a motion. Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based upon my review of the owner's application, site plan and building elevation, my site visit, together with the presentation by the owner's consultant and the planning staff's report, I am satisfied that the variance is minor in nature and conform to the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I put forward a motion that the application as applied for be approved, subject to the standard condition that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated May 17th, 2024, and elevation drawings dated July 17th, 2024, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of decision. The building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application has been approved.
Thank you, members. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. Okay, that concludes the applications for tonight. We have minutes to confirm for June 26th. Mr. Hardcastle, and motion to adjourn. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you. We are adjourned at 8:24. Madam Secretary Treasurer, if you can let us know when we're off the air.